So in this session, we are going to look at some numbers on business mathematics, and in these numbers, we'll basically be doing numbers that are related to taxation. Just some questions here that define how we calculate taxes. So a manager of an industry, this question says, earns a gross salary of 2 million. Now, when you're talking about gross salary, we are talking about the kind of salary before taxes have been deducted. So it's 2 million Uganda shillings per month, which includes an allowance of 500,000, which is tax-free. The rest of her income is subject to an income tax, which is calculated as follows. So after this 500,000 has been deducted because it is tax-free, the rest is subject to these kinds of rates of income, income tax. So first of all, find her taxable income. So of course, for us to answer part A, which is her taxable income, first of all, she earns 2 million. So that's her gross. We subtract the amount of money that is tax-free, and according to the question, it's 500,000. So we remain with 500,000. We subtract 500,000, and when we deduct, after doing the arithmetic, we subtract those two, you end up with 1,500,000. Because this question says that the 500,000 is tax-free, the rest of her income is subject to an income tax. So if this 500,000 is tax-free, what remains is what is subject to income tax, and this is what we call taxable income. So that is part A for you. We have answered part A. So to answer part B, calculate her monthly tax income. It means that her monthly tax income is subject, this is the 1.5 that we are going to, subject to this tax. So now we need to find out, we are going to draw a simple table here. Let's look at the range of the monies. First of all, our taxable income here is taxable. Our taxable income is 1,500,000. Okay, so on this taxable income, let's look at this. We have the first 800,000. So from here we have the first 800,000. The first 800,000, what tax rate is going to be? So now if this is the first 800,000, let's look at how much remains. So the remainder after taking out that 1.5, so I shall come here and say that 1,500,000 minus the 800,000 that we are going to subject to tax, we remain with 700,000. Okay, so the first 800,000 is subject to what tax? It is 7.5 over 100, because that's what it's written here, that it is 7.5% times first 800,000. This is the tax, the calculation. And so when we subject it to that kind of calculation, what do we end up with? We shall end up with the actual final tax, and the actual final tax in this case will be, we shall put it there. So the actual tax, 7.5 times 100, we shall end up with 60,000. So that's the tax. So remember here we end up with 700,000 is what remains. Now according to our question, the next 500,000, so in other words, the next 500,000 is subject to what's the tax rate, which is 12.5 over 100 times the 500,000. Now when we deduct this 500,000 from the 700,000, which is the remainder, what do we have here? So it's 500,000 minus 700, we remain with 200,000. That is how much money has remained. So we go ahead and multiply that too, and we shall end up with 62,500. So so we finish that next 500. Then we're talking about the next. They're talking about the next 100,000. So in the next 100,000, the tax rate there is 20%. So it's 20 over 100 multiply that by 100,000. So when we subtract that 100,000, how much money do we remain with? From 200, we had 200,000. So when we remove the 100,000, we remain with 100,000. So when we subject this to tax, this and that cost, we remain with 20,000. Like that. So that is also done. So we'll get to the next 30,000. Now, I mean the next 60,000, which is this right there. So in the next 30,000, the next 60,000, we're going to apply a tax rate of 30%. So we continue. That is in the next, the question says in the next 60,000, we are going to apply a tax rate of 30%. So it's 30 over 100 times the 60,000. So from here we can see that it's going to become, from here, it is 100,000 minus the 60,000. What do we have? We remain with 40,000 to tax. That's what remains. So that 60,000, this cancels with that, this cancels with that, remain with 3 times 6 is 18, and 3 zeros. So it's 18,000 right there. Then from there, we have, the question says here that the remainder, 35% is taxed on the remainder. So we shall go ahead and look at the remainder. Now this is what remains here. The 40,000 is what remains. And that remainder, they're telling us that it is taxed at 35%. So the remainder, which happens to be 40,000, of course, here there's now nothing, 0. The remainder, which is 40,000, is taxed at 35%. So it's 35 over 100, multiply that by 40,000. So when you multiply this times that, you end up with 14,000. So you add up all the tax from, in this column, the column for tax, and you end up having 174,500. That's how much income tax that is paid. So we have answered part B. Calculate her monthly income tax, and that is her monthly income tax. So moving on to part C. Express her monthly income tax as a percentage of her monthly gross salary. So we have here her monthly income tax here as 174,500. So we shall come here and say it's 174,500. We shall divide that by her gross income. Her gross income, according to the question, is 2 million. So it is divide that by the 2 million shillings, which is her gross monthly income. Multiply that by 100%. These 2 zeros go with those 2 zeros. This goes with that. This goes with that. And then the rest is calculator work. So we shall end up with 8.725%. So that is the percentage of her taxes, on the percentage of the tax she pays on her gross monthly income. And that's it. In a revenue authority department, the tax earned income is calculated as follows. The first 120,000 is tax-free, and the remaining income tax is taxed at 25%. Find the tax payable on unearned income of 100,000. So now remember, they are telling us that the first 120,000 is tax-free. So meaning that for part A, if I am making 100,000 as taxable, as my income, 100,000 is less than the 120. Remember, 120 is the threshold I need to hit and before I'm taxed. So since 100,000 is still below the threshold, then it means that the tax payable here is nil. In other words, there is no tax payable here for part A. Then part B, it's 440,000. That's their income earned. Let's find the tax payable here. Now this one is way above the threshold of 120,000, so it's going to become, so the tax payable, we shall get, this is now part B, we shall get the gross earned income, which is 440,000. We subtract the threshold or the tax-free money, which is 120,000. When we subtract those two, we shall end up with 320,000. So 320,000 is what is taxed, and according to the question it says that the remaining income is taxed at 25%. So the remaining income will become 25% of that, and by 25 once, that is 4 times. Then there we shall get to saying what is 32 divided by 4. 32 divided by 4 is going to give us 8. So that's going to, by 4 ones, this is 80,000. So it means that the tax payable there is 80,000. Like that. And that's it about just taxes. Yeah, moving on to the next topic in the next session. My name is Arnold Rangakuramia. This is Kisembo Academy. Thanks for tuning in.